everyone, here is the game Loose Nukes. This is one of two games that are by Sebastian J, and this one is about what might potentially happen if the DPRK, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, falls apart, but yet they are able to start getting control of nuclear assets again. So this game can end in a mutual destruction if the DPRK control marker reaches the 4th level here. It starts off of the sections here, off to the side, but once it's on there, it can never come off again. We'll talk about ways it can go up, but here is the setup. Each player is going to get battalion task forces and nuclear disarmament teams. The nuclear disarmament teams look the same. These will probably look a little bit different before the end. You're going to have to put at least one unit on every one of these spaces that shows your faction side. So one player is going to be playing as the People's Republic of China, or PRC. Another player is going to be playing as the Republic of Korea Alliance. So you're going to see these flags down here. You're going to have to put at least one unit on each. You have battalion task forces and nuclear disarmament teams. You can distribute those as you wish. Just being aware that your movement is going to be determined by how many units are in that stack. So the next thing that you're going to do is you see these numbers across the map in different spots. Those numbers indicate how many of these face down nuclear assets that you're going to place into those hexes, depending on that number there. Some will have a 1, some will have a 2, some will have a 5. And you'll go ahead and place those in there. You'll also place in these DPRK controlled or DPRK battalions here. They're going to be opposing units for both forces. Both players will get a die. Both players get some cubes to show when opposing forces have been placed under stress via electronic warfare. So after you set up, depending on how you want to, with the ROK Alliance down here, PRC up here, the PRC is always going to take the first actions in the game, and this will always be true for the odd numbered turns. And then we have the even numbered turns where the ROK is going to take 3 actions on their turn, and then followed by the PRC. One of the things to be aware of in setup is that these should be in some type of opaque, not transparent container when you place them out, so that you can place them out face down like this. This information over here has just been maintained for educational purposes. This gives us the general placement of where these types of facilities are in the Korean Peninsula, specifically in the DPRK country. Now, one thing I will say is you don't have to do this exact setup. Maybe you wanted to double stack your battalion task forces like that, so that there's 3 units in here, 2 of battalion task forces and 1 NDA. The problem with that is when we get to the movement, and there's a movement phase for every turn. When we do movement, first we're going to do movement like this. So I can move up to 2 because there's 2 units stacked in here. I could go 1, 2, and I could drop off along the way if I wanted to. But probably what I want to do is go down here and try to secure the assets in this one. That's my one advantage. There's numerical advantage down here to the ROK, but the PRC has a geographical advantage. So I might want to do that. Up here, I could do something 1, 2, trying to get this one. And up here, I could finally do this 1, 2, and do that. Since I am first, I have to move first. Then we resolve the movement for the ROK Alliance. Maybe I would want to do something like this, where I have an NDA and a BTF that are going to go in here and get ready to engage there. Now, I do have a stack of 4 here. So the only rule related to movement is you can only leave a hex once per movement phase. So maybe I want to do something like this, to where I go through here, pick these guys up, and then go something like this. And then, so that's, I have a total of 6 here now. So that's 1, and then drop these guys off that were originally over here, 2, 3, and my total movement is only 4, so I'm gonna be not too aggressive. I'm just gonna come around here 4. There's no opposing forces here, so I'll be able to try to get that. So that's the movement phase. After I'm done with the movement phase for both sides, depending on who gets to start, again, odd number PRC gets to go first with movement, and even numbered ROK gets to go first. Now we're to the point where you get to take actions. Actions are things like engage, where you're going to engage opposing forces, either the DPRK forces or the opposing forces who are in your hex. One thing to know is nuclear disarmament teams, these guys can never be in a hex alone. And just to point out, this is not final components either for this or the turn track or the map or some of the things here. But these forces can never be alone. These nuclear disarmament teams, they can't be alone with an opposing force unless that force has been subverted electronically. So just be aware of that. All right, so I can engage, I can attempt to disarm and then gain these nuclear assets. I can attempt to electronically subvert. So this is an electronic warfare action. Let's assume that this was on here. If I'm successful, I roll a 4 or higher, and if I roll a 4 or higher, this DPRK control goes down because my hackers are good. But the other thing that happens is I get to place a subversion cube out on all opposing forces in that hex. They can't do anything until they've been refreshed, which will never happen for these non-acting player DPRK markers. This will never happen for the non-acting DPRK markers. So if they've ever been subverted, they just stay like that, and your NDA teams can go in and try to secure nuclear assets as long as your opponent doesn't get in your way. So again, engage, disarm, electronic subversion. We also have an opportunity to use our satellites, and we get intel. That one is free. We don't have to roll for that. We'll talk about the other actions in a second, but if we roll, if we want to take the airdrop action, we just simply look at any hex. It doesn't have to be the one we're going to look into. Take a look at those, and that one's a 0, but maybe we find out, oops, got a lot going on here. Maybe if we find out that that one is a 3. So we have a 0 and a 3 here in this, so that might be worth going to pick up. And then we roll to drop in any single unit. It can be a BTF or an NDA unit. Those are the basics of the actions. Let's go back and talk about the two main actions you're going to be using, the engage and the disarm. If I choose to engage, so like here, because PRC is going first, in fact, I have to engage before I can pick up these, because my NDA, my nuclear disarmament team, can't pick up any of these until I've gotten rid of the opposing force, and in this case, a DPRK. So if I want to get rid of this, I would roll and see. As long as I get a 4 or greater, I can get rid of this force here. That's the good part. The bad part is, once I've done that, remember that this starts off to the side, but once I've done that, I have to roll and see if the DPRK control goes up because of the tension and chaos going on in the area. In this case, it won it. That's a 2. However, if I had rolled a 5 or 6, it would put it on here. Again, this never comes off. And if it was already on there, it would increase the DPRK control on the peninsula. If it ever reaches this last stage of DPRK control, we have guaranteed that there's mutual destruction. So that's a problem. You're going to want to use your electronic warfare capabilities to bring that DPRK control down throughout the game. But let's assume I had just put this on here. I could now take an action to try to pick up one of these assets. And in that case, I rolled a 6, so I can pick up an asset. I take a look at it without showing my opponent. It is a 1. This will be important. If we don't lose in mutual destruction, then that is a point for me. And finally, maybe I want to try again. So I'll roll again, and I can, that would be a failure to pick up. But let's say I done something else. Maybe I had decided to do some electronic warfare and just subvert maybe these guys down here because I'm worried about them. So I declare which hex I'm doing. So I say here, declare the hex, I roll, and I'm successful. And since I'm successful, every unit in there is subverted. And since they are with the DPRK, we put that on there. One of the actions I haven't talked about yet, and this will be on the ROK turn. So 3 actions by the PRC. Now it's the ROK's turn. The PRC have finished their turns for the first round. And then the 3 actions by the ROK might be to refresh. So that refreshes everything in that hex. That hex is now refreshed. Then maybe I want to try to engage. So I could engage these opposing forces here. I'm successful at engaging them. And now I remember I have to roll to see if this goes up. It does not, because it's only on a 5 and 6. So we're fine there. And then I would use my last action of my 3 actions to try to pick up this tile, and it is a 0. So I just put that off to the side. I have now secured a nuclear asset. My opponent wouldn't know that this is a 0. It just stays face down in front of me. And then whoever has the round will roll to see if we increase the DPRK control, which did happen right away. So that would be the end of the first turn for both players, and we're on to the second turn. Remember, in the even numbered turns, the ROK player is going to get to go first. We'll continue playing like this, where we're going to be doing things like engaging, disarming, electronic warfare, and airdropping after intelligence, and refreshing until we get to the end. Remember to always put up the DPRK control when we roll to see if an opposing force makes that happen. So whenever we get a 5 or 6, let's say I was able to secure all these assets later on, and now I want to drop in somewhere else. Maybe this player has moved up to here to engage to provide more force going against the PRC forces. So this player decides that it's in their best interest to try to grab this, so they could take a look at it, see if it's worth it. That one is not worth it. Let's see here. Let's get a better one. We'll pretend it looked like this. Okay, so let's say that you take an intel look. This would be the first half of your airdrop. Your satellites are working. You see there that you get a 3 if you get in there. Now, the ROK player in this case has no idea that this is a 3, but you're going to say, I'm declaring this unit and it wants to get in there, and they're going to roll. They roll, and as long as they get a 3 or higher, this is the easiest roll in the game, they get to get in there, grab that. They get to get in there. That just gets them there. Then they would still have to use another action to pick it up. So as long as they rolled a 4 or better, they get to pick up that asset and take it. One other thing to note is whenever you have multiple NDAs in the same hex, so in this case, I have 2 NDAs in this hex, I get a +1 in my roll. So no longer do I need a 4+ to pick up that asset. Now I just need a 3+ to pick up that asset. The lowest this can go is 2. If you ever roll and get a 1 for picking these up, you still fail. That's just a 0, but good to know. We go until we get to the end of the game. At the end of the game, if we haven't made the world end here, then we will roll for any remaining nuclear assets out on the board. For each of those that we roll a 6, in that case nothing, but if we roll a 6 on those for any assets that we haven't picked up, that leads to the DPRK control going up, and we can still mutually lose the game. If you make the game end because someone has killed an opposing force, whether the DPRK forces or maybe I attacked my opposing player, if you make the game end that way, then you have a minor loss and your opponent has a minor win. That's one of the only differences in that case of making the world end that way. If it just ends in between rounds or at the end of the rounds or at the end of the game, then it's just a loss for everybody because you didn't do a good enough job of securing these assets. Take a look at this end state here of a game. This would be a pretty typical state in that the ROK has done a pretty good job of both subverting the PRC and other forces in a place, and they have secured a good amount of nuclear assets. Actually, both sides have secured a good amount of nuclear assets. It's just that there are a bunch of 0s here for the PRC. They were able to come down here quickly. The ROK responded, but a lot of those ended up being 0s in the 5 stack. So they have a total of 4, 7, 8 points, and here we have 4, 7, 10 points. So as long as the game doesn't end through mutual destruction via DPRK control down here, the ROK Alliance is going to win. They don't know that yet, though. First of all, you reveal at the end, after you've resolved all this, you do your normal end of the round roll to see if this goes up. That would push this up. Let's pretend it didn't, though. What you would roll for is each one of these assets that was remaining on the board. So I roll for this one. If I get a 6 like that, then that goes up. If I get a 6, nope. And we roll once more, and it doesn't go up. So the game didn't end. This is actually a pretty typical way for the game to end, with some forces still out on the board. You didn't quite get everything that you wanted to get, and that is probably a 2, so this could have ended in a draw, which would be a way that the game could end to. So if this were a 2, and actually it is, then both sides would have, and the PRC would have picked up, both sides would have had 10 points, and the game would have been in a draw. Usually you get 9 to 15 points in this game on each side. But as long as this doesn't reach the end, you just compare your point totals. In this case, we'll keep it this way with the 8 to 10. And this side means that the ROK would have secured the victory in the game. As long as that DPRK control last spot wasn't reached via rolling for control for each of these assets that were still on the board. Remember, that last roll is just put up by a 6 instead of a 5 or 6 like it is at the end of each round. Okay, that's the basics of the game. That's Loose Nukes. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.